High in the mountains, where the sky meets the stone, lies one of the oldest lands on the planet, the Armenian highlands, between the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, and the Caspian. Here began what scientists call the genetic mystery, a people whose blood has frozen in time. 3,000 years ago, something happened. Genetic mixing suddenly stopped. The study by Haber and colleagues, published in the European Journal of Human Genetics in 2016, analyzed the complete genomes of 173 Armenians. The result was shocking. Genetic signals of mixing cease after 1200 BC. After the collapse of the Bronze Age, when the great civilizations of the Mediterranean fell in flames, the Armenians closed themselves off. What caused one people to turn into a genetic island? And why does their blood hold a code that has disappeared from all others? Armenians call themselves Hai. Legends speak of their ancestor Haik, a descendant of Noah, a giant who rose against the tyrant Bel. Haik's arrow tore the sky over Babylon. Blood, freedom, the beginning of a people. But myth is always a distorted memory. What if beneath the layer of legends lies the true story? A story of migrations, wars, and mixtures. For decades, scientists could not answer one question. Where did the Armenians come from? They do not resemble Turks. They do not resemble Iranians. They do not resemble Greeks. They are a genetic bridge between Europe, the Middle East, and the Caucasus. Whole genome analysis showed they form a distinct cluster linking 3 continents. Are you ready to discover whose blood flows in the veins of this people and why they ended up where all paths converge? U5, U4, maternal lines as old as ice itself. 40 to 50,000 years ago, the last glacial maximum. Europe buried under layers of ice. But here, life. Hunters, gatherers, survivors. Schoenberg and colleagues sequenced complete mitochondrial genomes of 30 Armenians in 2011. The result? All 30 sequences are unique. The diversity is astonishing. Haplotype U accounts for 26.7%, the oldest European lineage. U5, hunters of the Paleolithic. Dark skin, blue eyes. They roamed Europe long before agriculture. Demographic analysis showed 2 waves of expansion around 45,000 years ago and 15 to 18,000 years ago after the glaciers receded. What protected this land from the extinction of ancient lines? And why has the blood of hunters survived for millennia here? X, a haplogroup that should not exist. 10% of Armenians carry this maternal line. It is found only among the Caucasian peoples, Armenians, Azerbaijanis, and Georgians. But it is absent in Turks, absent in Iranians. Genetic data showed X is characteristic exclusively of the Caucasus. This is not an introduced lineage. It is indigenous, born here. Ancient, isolated, unique. Imagine that thousands of years ago, a group of people climbed into the mountains and stayed there forever. Their daughters passed down mitochondria from generation to generation until they became a living artifact, a genetic testament to isolation. Can you imagine that someone in modern Yerevan carries the DNA of a woman from the age of mammoths? Blood that has never left these mountains. 9,000 years ago, the world changed. From Anatolia, the territory of modern Turkey, people emerged with grain, pottery, and livestock. They moved in all directions, settled Europe, brought civilization. Their patrilinear lines G2A, J2, J1. Their maternal lines HK, JT. The study by Rutzi and colleagues in 2012 established the homeland of haplogroup G as Eastern Anatolia, Armenia, and Western Iran. G2A P15 is found in 6 to 13% of modern Armenians. These are farmers, builders, those who turned stone into homes and grass into bread. J2A M410 makes up 17 to 32% of Armenians, a lineage associated with the spread of agriculture across the Middle East. J1 M267 comprises 4 to 15%. The Levant, the Fertile Crescent, the first crops. But the farmers were not the last. What if I told you that after them came the horsemen and they changed everything? RZ2103, a lineage that should have disappeared. 6,000 years ago, from the Black Sea steppes came the Yamnaya culture. Horsemen, warriors, pastoralists. They carried the patrilinear haplogroup R1b, one of the most widespread in Europe. The Yamnaya conquered the continent. Their descendants, Celts, Germans, Slavs. But in Europe, the male line dissolved into other peoples. The Sazerain Arc project, published in Science in 2022, analyzed 727 ancient genomes over 11,000 years. The sensation: descendants of Yamnaya men through the Y chromosome RZ2103 have survived in Armenia. Armenia has become an enclave of steppe origin. 15 to 33% of modern Armenians carry haplogroup R1b1b1-L23. Imagine horsemen from the Ukrainian steppes left a genetic trace, and only there is their lineage alive. How is this possible? Urartu, Hayasa, Nairi, names of kingdoms dissolved by time. Armenian chronicles speak of great ancestors, of heroes fighting the Assyrians. But historians debated the truth of these myths. DNA provided the answer. Genetic analysis showed that the diversity of Armenians is explained by several waves of mixing between 3,000 and 2,000 years BC. The Bronze Age, the era of great migrations, the domestication of the horse, the invention of chariots, the spread of metallurgy. Peoples moved, met, mixed. Hunters from the north, farmers from the south, horsemen from the east. Each wave left a mark in the genes. Scientists have proven that the myths of great relocations were true. Legends emerged as memories of DNA. Can we trust ancient chronicles when genetics confirms they were right? A crossroads of migrations. The study by Kovkanisian and colleagues in 2014 analyzed 757 Armenian men from 6 geographical regions. The discovery: at least 2 directions of Neolithic migrations passed through Armenia. The first is Western. Haplotype R1b1a2m269, a route along the Mediterranean to Europe. Western Armenians from the Lake Van region show genetic proximity to Crete and Greece. The second is Northern. Haplotype GM201, a path to the North Caucasus. Central Armenian populations show a 16% frequency of G and genetic similarity with North Caucasian peoples. J2M172 moved both ways, to Europe and the Caucasus. Haplogroups J2G and R1b1a2m269 comprise between 49 and 70% of all patrilinear lines of Armenians. Armenia was not just a home. It was a gateway. Armenians did not come from somewhere else. They were always here. Everyone else passed through them. The time of warriors, the Bronze Age. About 29% of the ancestral component of Armenians traces back to Neolithic Europeans, the Tyrolean Iceman Otzi, who lived 5,300 years ago. This is significantly higher than in modern Middle Eastern populations. What does this mean? The ancient Near East was genetically closer to Europe than it is today. Neolithic migrations connected the continents. Peoples did not move in straight lines. They diverged in circles, collided, merged, diverged again. Haplotype E1b1b1m35 is found in 3 to 8% of Armenians. The Mediterranean, the trace of ancient sailors and traders crossing the seas long before the Phoenicians. Analysis indicated that Armenians preserved a genetic landscape from the Bronze Age. Their genes are a frozen imprint of that world that has disappeared and will never return. Can you accept that modern Armenians are living heirs of the builders of the first empires? In 301 AD, Armenia became the first Christian state in the world. The religious choice turned into a genetic barrier. Surrounding peoples, Zoroastrians, pagans, later Muslims. Marriages with them were forbidden. Within isolation, maternal lines over 1,000 years old were preserved. U approached 27%, the oldest European hunter line. H 20%, the most common in Europe. J 16.7%, the Middle East. T 10%, X 1 in 10, a unique Caucasian line. K and HV 6.7% each. All these lines are as ancient as agriculture, locked within one people for centuries. Christianity became a fortress. The church protected identity more effectively than any army. Imagine a religion working as a biological shield, separating one people from all others for 17 centuries. Is this possible? Sassoon, a mountainous valley in western Armenia, a place cut off from the world. Genetic analysis revealed the Sassoon population is a unique outlier. They do not resemble other Armenians. TM184, 20%. Nowhere else in Armenia are such frequencies found. R2M124, 17%. A lineage characteristic of India and Central Asia. How did it get to the Armenian mountains? Trade routes? Ancient migrations? Scientists link this to prolonged geographical isolation. Sassoon has been closed for centuries. Marriages within the community. No outsiders. The result? A unique genetic profile distinct from all other Armenians. Sassoon is proof that isolation creates new genetics. One valley. One people. 1,000 years without contact with the outside world. What happens to DNA when time stops? Armenia at the crossroads of empires. Byzantium from the west. Persia from the east. Arabs from the south. Turks from the north. Conquests, wars, genocides. Yet Armenian genetics changed little. Whole genome studies have shown Armenians significantly differ from modern Turks. Turks exhibit a genetic shift towards Central Asia, with about 8% East Asian admixture dated to approximately 800 years ago. This reflects Turkic migrations. Seljuks, Ottomans. Armenians show no signs of this shift. Genetically, they are most closely related to Cypriot Greeks, Lebanese Christians, and Jews. Other genetic isolates of the Middle East that have preserved an ancient genetic landscape. Empires tried to erase them, assimilate them, dilute them, but the memory encoded in genes turned out to be stronger than any empire. How did one people preserve themselves among giants? Faith? Language? Or something in the DNA itself? The Armenian language? Indo-European. But a separate branch, not Slavic, not Romance, not Germanic, a distinct group within the Indo-European family. The Sazern Arc project established a connection between the Armenian language and a common steppe heritage through the Y chromosome line that has survived only here. This supports the hypothesis of a West Asian origin of the Proto-Indo-European language. The language created an invisible barrier. An Armenian-speaking Armenian could not understand a Turk. A Turk could not understand an Armenian. The linguistic gulf turned into a genetic one. The inability to communicate implied the impossibility of marriage. About 500 years ago, internal structures emerged. A period of division between the Ottoman and Safavid empires. Western Armenians, Eastern Armenians. Two clusters divided by borders but connected by language. Words became mightier than swords. But at what cost? The 11th century, the Armenian kingdom of Cilicia, the Mediterranean coast, ports, ships, crusades. Armenians traded with Franks, Venetians, and Genoese. Contacts with Europe, dynastic marriages. It seemed the genetic barrier should have broken. Yet even here it held firm. Analysis of contemporary Western Armenians showed they formed a distinct cluster while preserving their core genetics. The Mediterranean influence proved to be a drop in an ancient ocean. The Middle Ages did not destroy their separateness, it reinforced it. Armenian quarters in Jerusalem, Constantinople, Venice. The diaspora scattered around the world. They lived among Italians, Greeks, and Arabs, but did not mix. The church, language, memory. Invisible walls stronger than stone. Is it possible to live for centuries among strangers and not dissolve? Armenians proved that it is possible. But what held them together when the whole world pushed them apart? Armenia is not homogeneous. Geography created a genetic mosaic. The western regions lean towards the Mediterranean. Their genes indicate ancient ties with the island peoples of the Aegean Sea. Central regions bear an enhanced Caucasian imprint with 16% northern lines. Mountain passes allowed migrations for centuries. Isolated valleys became genetic traps. Here, ancient lines from distant lands froze in proportions reaching 20% and higher, not found anywhere else in Armenia. The eastern territories reflect an averaged portrait. All streams converged here. Mountains divided, valleys connected, rivers determined the paths. Each region received its unique signature recorded in the genes. But despite this internal diversity, outside there is one identity. A single memory proved stronger than geography. How is it possible to remain one people when the very land pushes apart? 3 major studies. Leading scientific journals in the world. 727 ancient genomes over 11,000 years. 173 modern complete genomes. 757 Y chromosomal analyses. All results converge to one conclusion. Armenians preserved a genetic profile that has disappeared in all others. Their ancestral components are about 30% Neolithic Europeans, higher than in any modern Middle Eastern populations. The steppe component is present but does not dominate. The Near Eastern remains foundational. The oldest European lineage has survived. A unique combination of 3 worlds: Paleolithic, Neolithic, and Bronze Age in proportions unchanged for 30 centuries. Scientists call this genetic continuity, a rare phenomenon in human history. How did one people achieve what no one else could? And what price did they pay for it? Genetic ties no one suspected. A large-scale analysis of ancient DNA traced migration paths over millennia. The results were shocking. Armenians were found to be genetically close to peoples separated by thousands of kilometers. Cypriot Greeks, Druze of Lebanon, Jews. All are genetic isolates that preserved an ancient Near Eastern profile that has disappeared in others. Neolithic farmers from Anatolia settled in a wave from the Aegean Sea to the Armenian highlands. They created a genetic continuum extending across 3 regions. Then each group closed itself off. Religion, language, geography. Isolation conserved a common past in different peoples. Modern technologies showed Armenians are not an isolated island. They are a knot in a web of ancient connections. A shared memory of an era when the world had not yet divided. Can you believe that peoples who have never met carry the same DNA? The 20th century, a time of wars, revolutions, and mass migrations. Old empires collapsed. New states redrew the maps. Ideologies attempted to erase the past. Urbanization mixed regions. Migration severed connections. Traditional barriers faced unprecedented pressure. It seemed nothing would withstand the tide. But genetics told a different story. Modern studies confirmed that Armenians maintained continuity despite monumental disasters. Their genetic profile remained stable. Genetic continuity indicates the preservation of traditional practices even as geographical boundaries vanished. Memory proved stronger than chaos. The 21st century opened a new era of mixed marriages, international families, and blurred identities. Many peoples are changing before our eyes. Armenians remain. What holds a people together when everything around pushes for change? Closeness has consequences. When a population exists within itself for centuries, certain genetic variants do not disappear. They accumulate. The founder effect. Genetic drift. The Finns face this directly. About 40 rare hereditary conditions are concentrated in their population. Scientists call this the Finnish heritage of diseases. Ashkenazi Jews paid a similar price. Tay-Sachs, Gaucher, accumulation diseases arising from centuries of endogamy. This is a universal law of population genetics. Any isolated group potentially carries such imprints. This is not a curse. It is a biological reality. What preserves uniqueness simultaneously conserves rare variants. Survival as a distinct genetic unit always comes with a cost. Can one maintain oneself without paying a genomic price? The Armenian highlands, a land where time has stopped in the genes. From the Ice Age to the digital era, one people has maintained continuity. They survived the cold of the Paleolithic, met the first farmers of the Neolithic, accepted the horsemen of the steppes, endured the fall of empires, the collapse of civilizations, invasions from all four corners of the world. Their DNA is a frozen chronicle of humanity. R1b, J2, G, Te hold the memory of the Yamnaya, Anatolians, hunters, and sailors. U, H, J, X are maternal lines as old as the Earth itself. 3 millennia of genetic continuity, a phenomenon that exists nowhere else. Studies call this a genetic miracle, one of the rarest instances in the history of Homo sapiens. Armenians are not just a people, they are witnesses, carriers of a code that has disappeared from all others. Ararat stands. A people live. Memory is immortal. Do you want to know what ancient blood flows in you? Like, subscribe, comment with your roots.